happy Wednesday, everybody. My name is Andy Moore. I am the Executive Director of Freedom of Information Oklahoma. Welcome to our final Lunch and Learn of the year. This has been a really fun series we've done. We've had a lot of great guest speakers. If you've missed any of them or you want to go back and watch them, we have archived all of them. I think all but one. I think we had some technical issues with one of them, but the rest are all archived on our YouTube channel. And I will post that link in the chat here. But if you go to our website, they're also on our website. If you go to our blog, I put each one as a separate blog post. So that's an easy way to find it. And our website, of course, is foioklahoma.org. So today is kind of a wrap up for the year. We won't go the full hour, so you get part of your lunch break back. But I get a lot of requests day to day from people looking for specific resources. We get questions, maybe that are specific questions, but also people just asking, hey, where can I find X? And it occurs to me that there are a lot of resources that are publicly available that are transparent and easily accessible to anyone with internet access. And while many people are aware of them, some might not be. And so we wanted to kind of use the time today to talk about what some of those resources are and see if something maybe you don't know. I also reached out to Catherine Gardner with the Reporters Committee for the Freedom of the Press and asked her if she had any recommendations. Her full-time job is the legal side of ensuring and fighting for transparency in government. And so she gave me a couple of great resources that aren't even specific to our state, but have a state-specific aspect to them. So I'm going to share my screen, and I pulled all of these up in separate tabs. And so we can go through them so you can see what they are, and I'll kind of talk through them somewhat briefly. And we should probably be done here by around 12:30 today. So the first resource that I think is enormously useful I probably should have just said Google, right? Like, you can Google so much these days. I try to tell my kids what it was like before the internet, because they just say, well, just look it up on your phone, just Google it. I was like, listen, back in my day, we didn't have Google, but we do now, and we can find a ton of information. So thinking through how you search for things, right, can be useful, because there's also a bunch of misleading junk out there. But Google is a great resource, of course. Now, specific to actual records and transparency things, let's start with OSCN, the Oklahoma State Courts Network. It's oscn.net, and it is a veritable treasure trove of information about anything in state courts, right? If you are, I have friends, right, who look up dates on here to see if they've got a legal history in advance. There are a lot of information. So anything to do with the state Supreme Court, of course, is on here down at the bottom left. There's news related to the courts. There's honestly way more information on this website than I think most people ever need. Things to highlight on the right-hand side, this kind of menu here. There's a lot of good forms. There are, notices about COVID-19. I will say court records is probably the thing that I use the most, because you can search for people, right? I'm going to search myself because I'm the one doing this webinar, and that feels the least nerve-wracking. And that's because there are a whole bunch of Andrew Moores that are in here. Some at the top, right, are appellate courts. These are state Supreme Court cases related to a ballot initiative with which I was involved the last couple of years. So I know this one here is me, some of these, because that was our petition. But there's obviously a bunch of Andrew Moores. It's sorted by county. You can go through if you've had speeding tickets that were filed in state court, like by a state trooper, those would be in there. You can look up, I think all the counties are on here now. You can look up a lot of stuff. It's pretty useful, particularly from the legal side of things. I'm not an attorney. I don't do legal research in that kind of formal way, but often you're trying to find some information out about somebody, about something. Now, bear in mind that if the person you're looking up information about is an attorney or a public official whose name might, like the governor, you're going to find a ton of stuff because they often, well, attorneys obviously are involved in many, many cases. And then public officials like the governor or high ranking state officials or legislators are also often named in a lot of legal filings. And so you may get, it narrows it a bit, but you still have a lot to sort through on your own. Legal research at the top is really helpful. There are on the website also really useful Oklahoma law, right? So everything about Supreme Court decisions, the statutes, right? Like Oklahoma laws, the Constitution itself, those kinds of things are, I think, really useful. And this is where you would find, for example, the text of the Oklahoma Open Records Act and Open Meeting Act, which is also very helpful. You can also find aspects of our state constitution, which if you've never read that, maybe take the weekend and get a nice cold beverage and sit down and read our state constitution. It is lengthy, it's somewhat interesting, and I think in many ways a glimpse into the minds of the framers, a little over 100 years ago. I'm actually currently reading a book about Oklahoma politics and starting in the beginning, and it's absolutely fascinating. The next site I want to highlight is the Ethics Commission website. The Ethics Commission, good folks doing good work, and they make recommendations, almost every year of how we can be more ethical. And it seems like if it targets the state officials, the legislature then cuts their budget, right? You ask us to be more ethical, you get less money to do your work. I'm not saying that's a causal relationship, but it does seem to be oddly correlated a lot of the time. Now, there's lots of things on here, including all of the rules for candidates, state officers, that kind of stuff, and how to file reports for campaigns, the laws, the guides for that stuff, education about it, very helpful, lobbying, all of those kinds of things. This is your go-to resource for all of that. If you're interested on how it occurs, how it's supposed to occur, or what rules people are supposed to be following, this is great. They also have their meeting agendas and stuff posted here. You can review past minutes from meetings, as well as history of the Ethics Commission itself. And then down here at the bottom left, you can look at the Guardian reporting system. And before I click on that, I want to note the line right below it that they used to have different reporting systems in the past, and you can click those. So if you're looking for records prior to 2015, click the other link. But for anything currently, you can click on this. There's a little hello and welcome statement. And then you can search for all of the reports filed by candidates, campaigns, lobbyists, all of that stuff. You can search by specific candidates, by specific committees. This includes IEs, independent expenditures, dark money groups, state question committee, all of that stuff is in here. And it's really helpful, right? So I think a lot of folks may search in here because they're looking for, Kevin Stitt. They're looking for information about a particular individual or race. They're looking for campaign finance filings, donation history, that kind of stuff is all public record, right? And this often, I think, particularly in today's political environment, can be helpful in understanding, to whom money is flowing. So you can see here previously is Governor Stitt's 2018 election campaign, which was 4 years ago. He is again running for re-election. So here's new information. You can click on that, including, who the chairperson, treasurer, those things of his campaign, and then fundraising reports, all of that kind of stuff, due dates in the future, and correspondence from the Ethics Commission. So tons of information here. If you're interested specifically in things dealing with ethics filings and campaigns, it's really interesting. You can easily go down a deep hole in a rabbit hole in researching things. So there's that. I will move on to the county assessor's website. Now, this is for Oklahoma County because that's where I live. Tulsa County has one. I've not gone through to determine if all 77 counties have county assessor websites or how useful it is. But there's a good chance you're watching this, you're probably in one of the state's larger counties: Oklahoma, Tulsa, Cleveland, Logan, Comanche, some of those, and they all have very useful. The thing that I think most people do on the county assessor website is look up histories of certain properties, right? So you can, down here at the bottom left, you can click search properties and type in an address. You can, in doing that, you can find out a lot of it. So you can search by the actual address with current ownership information. You can also search just based on a map. So we'll do it that way because that's, I'm not going to type in my home address on this very public Zoom. But let's say, we're looking at a building downtown, American Farmers and Ranchers Mutual Insurance. So there's the property lines. Then you can, you view the address, all of that stuff, the tax district, and then you can pull up the information on the assessor's website. So here it is. It's owned by Oklahoma City University. And then you can click on that, and there it is. Look, it's the law school, and there's the School of Law, and all kinds of, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm a big geek, but I think there's lots of interesting information out there. You can see previous owners, how much they paid for it or the assessed value of it, that kind of stuff. If you do this based on individual homes, like a residential property, you can find out a lot more information. I'm not going to do that for anybody because, again, that feels a little too personal. But let's say we go to the governor's mansion, right? It's over here. It's a big property of land. You can go to the state capitol building even and look that up. I've never looked up the state capitol on here before. This could be fascinating. There it is. No sketch available. Fortunately, we all know what it looks like. It's owned by the state, right? 2300 North Lincoln. There it is. It's historical. There's obviously not a price on there. The deed has not been transferred, but there you go. So you can look up literally any property you want to. Sometimes this is, I think interesting if you wanted to look up the airport. I don't. Commercial property is really interesting. Hospitals are very interesting, right? So you could go over here and look up. This is the OU Medical Center. You have to zoom in. Oh, there it is. So there's the whole property for that. Sometimes ownership of these things changes. You can see what that looks like, market value of some of these properties. And there's just a lot of kind of deep, interesting information you can find. There's a guest book. Do people sign the guest book saying they viewed the hospital on the county assessor's website? That seems funny. Anyway, lots of information. The county assessor does other things besides just property, but that's their main deal. So certainly a good resource if you're looking for property related information. As an example, I had a reporter call me one time with questions about an elected official's vacation home at a lake. And if I happen to know where on the lake that was, because it didn't come up under their name, which assumedly then it's owned by a trust of some kind that maybe had a different kind of name. And I didn't know, but they were literally on the map going around the lake, looking at every property based on some information they had heard or photos they had seen, trying to guess where it was because there was some rumors about value and what that looked like. So, there's a lot of, I think, important uses there for even property records. Third, a little self-plug here for our own website, freedomofinformation.org, Freedom of Information Oklahoma's website, FOI Oklahoma.org. As you can see at the top here, if you click on the resources tab, I think we've got some really great resources that are helpful, right? So we've got information about the Open Records Act. It includes links to other resources, right? So the Attorney General's thing, the Attorney General's information or rulings about changes or amendments like were made in the last couple of years, those are linked on the Open Meeting Act page. Joey Sinnott, professor at Oklahoma State University, has created this really great guide on how to request public records. He also created this model letter of how to request records. And then there's the same model letter, but with annotations, right? So like hints and tips and explainers for how to use it and what some of the things mean. So if you click this first link and you're not sure how to fill it out, it's pretty straightforward. But if you have questions or just want more information, hit up that annotated version. Very helpful. There's some training videos that we have found above, or if we found in the past for law enforcement, some corrections to those, records retention schedules, that kind of stuff. We try to, and I will say, we try to keep this stuff updated, but if you find something that's out of date, let me know, because we may have missed one, right? That happens. Open Meeting Act, kind of a primer about it. We get a lot of questions from nonprofits about how they, what their relationship is with the Open Meeting Act. So there's that one, some updates from the Attorney General's office. We also have, I think, an underutilized curriculum that's called Education for Freedom that we created several years ago that is completely free. There are lessons for K through 5, also for like grades 6 through 12. So we've kind of broken it out with a lot of really, I think, good usefulness for students of all ages, all learners of all ages. So if you are a teacher, librarian, and if you're a parent and you're homeschooling and you need some curriculum, this is a great resource right there. Other helpful links, upcoming events, which just goes to our event page, and then FOI attorneys. We get a lot of questions, people looking for legal help. These are some attorneys. We're not necessarily endorsing any of them, but it's people known to us that do government transparency related legal issues, right? So Kevin Kemper is on there. He's one of our board members. Obviously, I know he does this kind of work. He's on our board, but there are a number of others that we've heard good things. Generally, if you're an attorney who does this kind of work and you want to be listed, let us know and we'll put you on there. There's no like application process or contest, really. You have to bake a cake, and if it's delicious, we put you on there. That's the rules. No, I'm just kidding. All right. Next is the Oklahoma Press Association. So even if you're not a member of the press, this is a good resource, I think, because while we forget about the value and the power of organizing and kind of collectively working together from the press's perspective, most, if not all, media outlets in Oklahoma are members. And I think there's a lot of value there. I'm not a member, but there it is. I highlight their website not only because Mark Thomas is on our board, but because there's information about how to join. And the thing that I use the most is this little yellow book, the Open Meeting and Records book. This is the new 22nd edition. So that has been released this fall. That includes all of the updates from the last 2 legislative sessions, which is very important. The book contains the full text of the Open Records Act and Open Meeting Act, which is helpful. It has the amendments, the current version has amendment. It also has decisions related, or court decisions and attorney general opinions in there. It's divided up. I'll show you. This is the 21st edition. I keep this handy and reference it all the time. There was a lot of changes made last year. And so I have those changes printed out and just stuck inside. I'm excited. I need to order my new version. And I'm not going to highlight it, or not going to show you it all, but you would see all of my annotations and highlights in here, notes that I've taken. And that's just in the last year. This is my second or third one I've had. And so I'll have to make sure all of my notes are copied over to the new version. If you have questions about this, if you're a member of the press or just someone who is looking for answers, this is a super helpful resource. And for me, it's way easier to just look in this book than it is to pull up the law online. Some of the websites, including OSCN, are great and have everything there, but for whatever reason, it just seems a little easier to read in the little yellow book. So that's a great resource there. And then a couple of other resources that I got from Catherine Gardner. Again, she's the attorney with the Reporters Committee for the Freedom of the Press. The first one is on their website. They have an open government guide for every state, including Oklahoma. And in fact, she helped update this just last month. And this section was written by David McCullough, who passed away in 2020 and was one of the founders of our organization. And so this is has the text, at least part of it, right, of the acts, and then it goes through and really explains kind of everything about it. And so they break it into not only like the actual text of the law, but an explainer about the law and how to access it. And so they go through, like this question here is probably the one I get asked the most, right? Whose records are and are not subject to the Open Records Act? So executive branch, legislative bodies, courts, non-governmental bodies, all this stuff breaks it down, really easy to read. So if you want a primer or you want an overview of it, this is a tremendous resource. Because it kind of like, I like how they've presented it in this question and answer format, because that's how I think a lot of people will think, right? You kind of ask a question like, well, what about emails? Okay, well, connected with a transaction of official business, here it is. And then there's also the citations of the law itself, including attorney general opinions. So text messages, right? Look, nothing about social media posts are specifically addressed. Maybe it should be. That could be an amendment they could address next session. Fee provisions, get lots of questions about that. This is a section worth highlighting and probably printing out and posting on the wall. Excellent. Also, I will just say, in addition to this state guide here for Oklahoma, the RCFP website has a lot of important information. Again, not just for the press, but for the public. Their legal resources was really helpful. They have some information like at the federal level as well, which I think is really useful. If you are a reporter or a member of the press, that's somewhat loosely defined. The legal hotline, I know, is a huge resource. I have colleagues that are reporters here in the state who call them all the time with questions, and they are great about helping. So huge shout out to the Reporters Committee for the Freedom of the Press. And then last but not least, there's the FOIA Wiki, right? So it's basically a Wikipedia page about kind of all things related to freedom of information, right? So this was produced by the Reporters Committee, as well as contributions from a number of other groups. You can see that the link for Muckrock is purpled out because I click on that a lot. I'm going to add them. We'll go to that as our last one. But this has a ton of information about FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act, the kind of federal act. And again, similar to that open government overview that we saw on the RCFP page a second ago, this is tons of information about FOIA at the national level, at the federal level. So great resource. I don't know about you, but I can always go down a rabbit hole on some kind of wiki and looking at information. Really helpful on this, I think, is the agency's landing page, where it takes you to a list of a ton of other federal agencies. And that is really helpful because it goes into information about how to submit FOIA requests. For example, the CIA, right? So you go in there, takes you to this page, and gives you explanation on how to access it, right? How to get those informations, what laws pertain to that agency, all of that. Again, this site references Muckrock, which is great. Muckrock.com is our last resource of the day. This is designed to be a nationwide kind of clearinghouse for open records requests, right? So you can You can file your request through their website. They, I think, kind of specialize in federal requests, but you can send them to most state agencies as well. They don't have as many like municipal resources there. And obviously, every entity, every government entity might have a different process or procedure or form, but Muckrock has a lot of really helpful information about how to do it. As you can see here, there have been 102,000 requests filed through the website to almost 21,000 different agencies. And I guess not even a third of those have been fulfilled, which probably tells us something about the state of transparency in America. But those requests that have been fulfilled, generated almost 7 million pages of material. Holy moly, that's a lot of reading material. All right, so to recap, those are the resources that I think are perhaps most useful. They are not the exhaustive list, right? But they are really, really helpful. If you didn't have a chance to jot down the URL for each of those as we went along, I will include them on our website on the blog post about this webinar. And in fact, let me go back and I'll show you on our website. If I click back over, go to the blog, and you will see here each of these lunch and learns, like on the right, have our little lunch and learn logo with someone holding a sandwich. That looks delicious. I'm hungry. And then it has the video recording of that episode and a little summary of it. If there are pertinent links, I included those as well. But there's several of those, right? So, and you can go back. There's some that are even older. So I will add this one to that blog. It'll be right here next to our annual awards. And feel free to, and I'll put all those links in there as well. Now, one last thing before I go. It's almost 12:30. Thanks again for tuning in today and for all of our other Lunch and Learn webinars. I hope it's been helpful. We've covered a wide range of topics from healthcare to education, hints and tips on how to file open records requests, what law enforcement, the changes to the Open Meeting Act that were changed and then changed back and maybe changed again as they relate specifically to virtual meetings, as we've gone all virtual over the last couple of years. I've learned a lot, honestly. It's been a really great experience. And so I hope that's been useful to you as well. Now, I will also admit this is my last Lunch and Learn as host of FOI. I will be leaving the organization at the end of the year. It's been a wonderful 3.5 years, and I've appreciated my time here. I haven't even put this on social media yet, but obviously the board knows. So if you could, we, on behalf of the organization, would really appreciate you supporting us financially, right? Making a donation to Freedom of Information Oklahoma. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. I'll put the link to that in the chat for sure. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We survive on the generosity of people just like you. So if you have learned anything, right? What's the value for that nugget of knowledge you've learned during these Lunch and Learns? $5, $25, $100, whatever it might be. If you think about how much you might use these resources, we would really appreciate you considering a tax-deductible donation to our organization to help support them both now and in the future. All right. Well, with that note, it is right at 12:30. We are wrapping up. I hope that you have a lovely sunny Wednesday afternoon and happy holidays for any and all that you may celebrate this year. If you have any questions, please don't ever hesitate to reach out to someone at FOI Oklahoma. You can find us at foioklahoma.org. Thanks a lot.